Hey y'all, Sandy here, and welcome to the debut episode of our brand new podcast, Splitting Uprights. In a few seconds, I'll be joined alongside two of my best friends, Drew Smith and Jacob Wilson, and we'll be here to break down the week that was in the NFL. The NFL draft got started this last Thursday, started out with a bang, and was very successful throughout, and we'll be here to break it all down, all the major storylines from the players themselves to the draft itself. With it being virtual this year, we'll talk about things we liked, didn't like, and we think this episode went very well. Hopefully y'all do too. And hopefully y'all will come back and join us when we do it again. And now I'm going to throw it out to the rest of the boys. Gentlemen. All right, guys, it's the Monday after the draft. Big storylines all over the place. Fireworks in day one. Lots of stories to react to. Drew, I'm going to start with you, man. What was your biggest takeaway from the draft?
Biggest takeaway had to be the Packers taking Jordan Love in the first round. We've seen it before done in the Packers organization with Favre as their quarterback and A-Rod taken 24th. And to see it done again to A-Rod, I pretty much at the same age is definitely a big storyline and something we'll see plays effect on, if A-Rod's still there in a year or two, whether Jordan Love becomes the next A-Rod. There's a lot of storylines that are branching from day one that'll continue throughout many years from now that we'll have to see and watch that story close.
I think one thing that was interesting was like in the first round, in the draft leading up to it, we're always trying to make these false storylines in our head about, this could happen. Someone could trade up here. Someone could trade up. But it went relatively smooth through the first, 6 picks. Obviously, Simmons falling to 8 to the Cardinals was quite a surprise. I think they probably had other plans, the Cardinals did, but once Simmons fell in their lap, they're like, damn, can't pass that up. I think, Drew, you and I were Zooming during the draft, and we were kind of surprised with the Giants taking Thomas. It made sense, but it was surprising.
Yeah, well, one, it wasn't the top-rated tackle coming into the draft by, the experts, but it also just made it, obviously everyone had been saying, these are the top 4, they're going here. But I think as a Giants organization, they really want to focus on Saquon and Daniel Jones and their offensive offense, Evan Ingram, Sterling Sharp or whatever. They want to focus on the offensive side, not really on the defensive side with Isaiah Simmons. So, it makes sense, but I thought they would have gone like a Wharfs or something at 4, not Andrew Thomas. So, threw a curveball, but.
Yeah. What about you, Pookie?
I'm thinking, one of the biggest stories going on with the draft is the surprising lack of, draft day falls that we had. Guys were going up pretty much where you would expect them to, at least through the first round or so, which I was just sort of surprised that there weren't, a ton of, huge falls. I guess the biggest one you could probably say is CeeDee Lamb who got drafted by the Cowboys.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
I think he's a top 10 sort of receiver, but fell to 17, and I think that.
Ruggs being the first one off the board, he's a great player, vertical threat, absolutely, but for him to be the first player taken off the board, the first receiver, was pretty surprising. Oakland going receiver, Las Vegas now, not Oakland, but that was Lamb falling that far was kind of surprising, I thought.
Drew? Yeah, and I think when it comes to receivers, it's such a deep class that with the first 4 or 5 receivers, you kind of could take your pick on who you wanted, and I think they're all going to be productive. So it's not like you taking Ruggs, you're going to lose. I think he's going to be great, and in that division, speed kills with the Chiefs. So you really need to match that, and Ruggs was the perfect player for them. I felt like they were going to go Judy. I thought he fit their team better. But you allow Ruggs to be that speedster, and he can do more than just catch the ball. He can be in the backfield. He can do a lot of different things. So I think for the Raiders and John Gruden, that's kind of why they went with that Henry Ruggs pick.
I don't know, Pookie. There were 3 people who fell farther, and I didn't think they'd fall at all. In fact, when we did our fake mock draft sort of thing, our simulation, I think I had all 3 of these guys going in the first round. Those were the 3 safeties: McKinney, Delpit, and Winfield, and all 3 of them fell out of the first round. And
they were all first round talents, but you could easily see why they're a second round grade. I wasn't surprised to see them fall out of the first.
I don't know if they had a second round grade. We did note it, and I think we're going to hear Pookie, when he talks about his losers in the draft, mention this fact with the Raiders. But there was a run on center back, I say center backs, that's my soccer talking, cornerback. There's a run on the cornerbacks in this draft, and I think it's a response to the wide receivers, the class being so heavy, but also the way that the game is changing now more than ever. That the game is changing to where you need those cornerbacks as much as you need interior defensive line, defensive end, and you saw some of these guys being taken who I thought the safeties, all three of them had first-round grades. Some of these cornerbacks, I don't know if they had first-round grades, and yet they were taken. But
I agree.
I'm going to leave that to Pooki because I know he had some grades.
All right, let's just tear this Band-Aid off while we're here. Arnett for the Raiders. What the?
Agreed.
What were they thinking? Mike Mayock, I love you, dog, but come on, man. He's like the 8th best corner in the draft.
I feel like I'd rather have Delpit moving to cornerback. Like, I don't know.
He was definitely.
They could have made an elite safety tandem with Abram and Winfield or whoever. They had their pick.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They could have made an elite safety tandem, but they went a different way, partner.
I think that's it. I think it's the game. The game is changing, and it's those cornerbacks, and people are making mistakes. Maybe.
Well, like, I two things I saw. One, those guys fell, and I think in most drafts, those are first round talent guys. There was multiple reports when day 2 started that there were 25 to 30 guys that were rated as day 1 guys that fell to day 2 just because of how deep this entire draft was with the receivers and the tackles and everything. Like it was a very deep class. So I think a lot of those guys that fell to day 2, the second, third rounders, are going to be day 1 starters or guys that are going to make immediate impacts compared to in years past where day 2 guys were like they're a couple year projects. Some of these guys coming out, they're gonna potentially start day 1.
Well, how many prospects were there going into day 2 that were actually rated first round?
Here's a question: with the number of first round rated picks, was this draft as deep as the 2014 draft?
Deep.
Yeah, it was. I mean, I don't know, off the top of my head, but it was pretty. Both draft classes were pretty deep, and I definitely think we're going to see some guys that are going to be face of the franchises here for a while, or at least be with in the league and making an impact for a while. The other thing is that I think a lot of teams obviously mold themselves after the Patriots. The Patriots have built themselves from defensive backs to the interior because they've seen the transition. That's why they paid Stephen Gilmore so much money. They give Devin McCourty all these guys a lot of money because that's how they're seeing the NFL. And I think a lot of people are starting to see that trend and they're going along with it. So they're wanting to pay these cornerbacks and safeties more, and then let the other guys kind of be fill and replace guys.
Well, I think it's hard. I mean, we could break down almost every round. I think there were surprising picks or picks that we really liked. But for the sake of time, we should probably get to 2 that were pretty surprising. Drew, you mentioned it, obviously, Jordan Love off the top. I throw Jalen Hurts in there. Not as surprising as Jordan Love, but certainly not who I thought he was going to. I did not see the Eagles getting in there. But
Jalen, what does that say about their confidence in Carson Wentz? Is that indicative that they don't think he's going to be?
I thought about that too, Pooki. I thought about that. It's one of 2 things. It's like, okay, is it of lack of faith in Carson Wentz, or is it we're looking at what the Saints did with Taysom Hill and we like that and maybe that works? But I think maybe we thought too hard about it, and it's maybe the simple fact that how many games has Carson Wentz played with injury, and the Eagles, when they've had success, have had to rely on a backup quarterback. And maybe it's not a lack of faith in Carson Wentz as much as it is that's just been our game.
They're just worried about his health.
That's what it's been. Yeah. And they went up there and got their quarterback, and Doug Peterson obviously is very innovative, and
I'm sure they could even use him in some gadget plays. And
I'm sure they will. He probably lines up at running back maybe for a few plays,
or a wildcat quarterback.
Yeah.
I definitely agree. I think it's more of a backup need, and then also he does come with a Taysom Hill type package where you allow him to be the best player he can be as when he's moving on the feet, and they're definitely going to have some plays where Mariota last year with the Titans. He'd come in for a handful of plays on a drive and just gives a guy a different look. And I think it's definitely a good pick for the Eagles. It definitely surprised a lot of people. I'm from Indiana, so obviously the Colts. I wasn't raised there. I was only there 4 years, but my parents are Colts fans, so I always watch Colts. I travel around and I go see Colts games once a year. So big Colts fan. Overall draft, I know a lot of experts and everything are saying that they're rated like one of the best winners of the draft, and I definitely agree. Obviously not having a first round pick sucks, but getting DeForest Buckner basically as a draft pick is a win all day long. Like he's an all pro guy. He just had a Pro Bowl season. He definitely is one of those guys that's going to succeed and help us defensively. And then all of our draft picks way better than they've been when we had Ryan, like whatever his last name was, the Grissom, the worst GM ever. We only ever drafted small receivers that were speedy, which was T.Y. Hilton. We went out and got a 6'6", like 234-pound receiver out of USC, Michael Pittman Jr. Great pick, love it. Gives Rivers someone big to throw to like Mike Williams. The surprise pick for the Colts obviously is Jonathan Taylor, but I think it was great. You don't sign running backs, you draft them. Running backs don't last long in the NFL as they used to. They're usually done by 28. Their peak years is like a year or two after they get drafted. And Taylor, for me, one of the best guys in college. He definitely is like someone that is like, I can't wait to see it on the field with Mac 1-2 punch, and then a couple years he's going to take it over. And then the last guy I'll talk about, Eason, love it. He's obviously a project guy, but I think he's going to have a year under Rivers. I think he's going to have a year with Reich, and then hopefully next year he's battling for that starting position. But overall, I think definitely Colts got an A on the grade, so I loved everything.
Now, Drew, will you repeat what you said about you don't sign running backs, you draft running backs?
Well, I have a question about that. So why is it that like back in the day, running backs had a lot longer of a shelf life than they do now in the modern age of the NFL? Considering that they're doing a lot more pass protecting and pass catching, you would figure that there's a lot less injuries for people at the running back position. So why is it that they're so short on their shelf life today?
I personally, I don't know the exact reason, but I feel like it's one, there's a lot of competition. A lot of people play running back, obviously. There's a lot of talented guys. And then also I think that based on how they do in college, how many carries they get in college transitions to the NFL. So like someone who gets a lot of carries obviously is going to already have a lot of wear and tear on their legs. So therefore they're not going to be able to last as long in the NFL. And I just think too, the type of system, you have a guy who's going to play in Kansas City, who we didn't really talk about yet, but we will, in the LSU running back who got picked in the first round. He's not going to have a lot of wear and tear like a Jonathan Taylor and a Marlon Mack are, because the Colts, hand the ball off and they run. So instead of paying someone like a Christian McCaffrey $16 million a year, you pay someone $5 million a year to do basically the same thing, and you just move on to the next one every 5 years. So that's kind of the saying is you don't sign them, you draft them, unless obviously you sign them for a short-term deal or a less money deal.
Or for like a role play.
The game's changed. Simple as that. Earl Campbell wouldn't fit in with the Chiefs offense from last year. And he's one of the greatest of all time. I'm not going to speak about earlier running backs because I never saw them play, and it's not fair to say, well, they would have done this in this time. They would have done that in that time, whatever. But Pooki, that's a question I ask myself a lot too, and obviously the resources we have nowadays, the information and the research that we've done in terms of sustaining health, better treatment for our bodies has been a key focus as of late. I think, honestly, though, it probably boils down the most is what's the most effective nowadays. You look at the past few Super Bowl champions, the Chiefs was running back by committee. The Patriots was running back by committee. The Seahawks had Marshawn Lynch, but it's just the running backs nowadays is more like McCaffrey and Kamara taking over, and what can they do? They're pass catchers. Adrian Peterson, as great as he is, as talented as he is, his skill set is not what's most effective nowadays. And so over time, I think that's the reasoning why if you get a guy like McCaffrey, you probably would give him an extension as Carolina did. Barkley will be interesting. I think he's got a lot of those same skills, but I don't know, man.
He's like a bigger version of McCaffrey.
Yeah, the future of the running back position is just now being heavily debated. We don't know. But that's a great question, and obviously it'll be years before we really see what the end product will be. Hey, Pooki.
Speaking of running backs,
Pooki, get to it, baby. Get to it.
Okay, so I have a little bit of a problem. Okay, the Steelers had J.K. Dobbins on the board He was available to draft in the second round. They had an obvious glaring need at running back, and they selected Chase Claypool. Claypool, he's not a bad player. I'll say that. But we already have a 3D position at wide receiver with James Washington, Deontay Johnson, and Juju Smith-Schuster. And I think drafting a fourth receiver instead of a guy that you can put in a committee for running backs is kind of a bad decision, I would say. I can't speak for it now because we can see Claypool pan out and he's a star. You never know, but me personally, I just didn't like the pick. I wish that they would have gone a different direction. Hopefully he proves me wrong.
Your team didn't draft a kicker in the 5th round. A kicker that I didn't even know his name. I knew a lot of the kickers going into the draft because that's what I do. That's what I did. I didn't know this guy. So, but, well, that's another day for another time. All right, so we kind of talked about our teams. We'll have so much more time to get into it later down the road, but I just wanted some initial reactions off the bat. Other than our teams, guys, winners, losers in this year's draft?
Losers, Carson Wentz and Aaron Rodgers.
And the Raiders?
For sure.
I don't think the Raiders lost. I just think they fucked up their first-round pick.
Dude, that's a valuable pick. That could be a trendsetter for the next 5 to 10 years of your franchise, Pookie. That might be losing, bro. Look at who I don't know.
I know that they had some good other selections in the later rounds, though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Henry Ruggs wasn't a bad pick.
Drew, your Colts won. I thought your Colts had a solid draft.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of the Vikings. I'll have to go back and look at their team again and like who they drafted and everything. But I've seen the Vikings have won. The Cowboys, I think just them getting CeeDee Lamb where they got him, I think is a win. But I still think they needed other needs that they should have attacked first.
They did, but I don't think you pass that up.
Sometimes you just got to take best player available.
The shiny new toy, and CeeDee.
I mean, you saw that one with it. We didn't talk about this, but Jerry Jones taking a damn, doing the draft on his yacht. That's definitely a big win right there.
That's big baller North Rock moves, baby. You're from Rose City. That's what you do. That was sweet. I thought the Buccaneers did pretty well. They went out and got their tackle. They got Wirfs and someone they had to go get.
Antoine Winfield Jr. I think the
Bucs. Winfield, as you know, so.
Yeah, I think the Bucs and Saints are winners because they didn't draft for the future. They drafted to win now, and I think they got a lot of guys that are going to help them in in this upcoming season to help them win with their older quarterbacks.
Well, look at the differences between Green Bay and New Orleans. I've got 2 quarterbacks who are down to their final few years. One team goes with a center to help. That's a need to help Breeze right away. The Packers go and get another damn quarterback. So, and that's one that could fill up an entire episode that we do. We can talk about Green Bay later, but I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, Green Bay, you're in the NFC Championship game and you draft your replacement quarterback the next year, or in the draft right after that. Like the Saints didn't even make it out of the wild card, and they were trying to win now. So it definitely, I personally think Matt LaFleur doesn't like Rodgers, but that's for another episode that we can deep dive in.
Pookie, here's a team I thought did really well that hadn't been talked about a lot. It's the 49ers. I think they probably knew beforehand that Joe Staley was going to retire and knew that they had to go out and make some deals. So getting Trent Williams in that trade was huge. Then getting Kinlaw and, the receiver Ayachek out of Arizona State. I mean, you're talking
Brandon Ayuk.
Immediate need. Joe Staley being gone means you had a need a left tackle. I go out and get an all-pro left tackle. And I go out and get a receiver who was rated pretty highly. I needed a receiver after Emmanuel Sanders left. And then I got one of the reasons why we started this podcast is so we can talk about the hottest NFL players. I got one of the hottest NFL players in Nick Bosa. And now I get Kinlaw in there too. Dude, good luck running on that line. The 49ers have to run over people, and you're not running on them either. So
yeah, I think the 49ers are big-time winners in this draft.
Another winner, though, unfortunately, Pookie resides in your own division.
Those damn Ravens.
I know, man.
They actually went and got J.K. Dobbins. They loaded up at other positions. They have talent everywhere on the roster. It's like you can't really find a weak spot for them. They addressed every need that they could have. They could be a division winner for the years to come.
No. All right, we got a little over 4 minutes to go. Let's go with the number one team real quick. We'll talk Bengals. How'd you guys think they did? Obviously, they had the number one pick and they took care of it.
I honestly think the Bengals drafted really well this year. They did what they needed to do and took Joe Burrow. Okay. And then they made some other savvy picks in the second and third rounds. They didn't whiff on a whole lot of them. They made pretty solid, well-enthused picks that I would definitely recommend.
Well, this wide receiver class is so deep. You don't want to get into the numbers sometimes, like, oh, this guy's the 9th best receiver in the draft. And you're like, okay, that's so-and-so. That's actually really damn good in this year's draft. And getting T. Higgins, I mean, there was a time where T. Higgins would be – in most
he was a first-round prospect.
He's ranked the top 5 receiver. So getting T. Higgins is pretty big.
Yeah, I agree. I think them and the Dolphins had very similar drafts where they, got their future quarterback, and then they try to get targets around him, build around those guys. So I think both of them are actually I wouldn't consider them like big winners, but they definitely are taking the right step to becoming, guys or teams in the franchise that you have to look out for.
They suck. Their rosters need work. They had top picks, and they did what they needed to do. They didn't fuck it up like the Browns. So they may not have been overall winners, but they didn't fuck it up, and that makes them winners in my book because the Browns have shown how to do it in the past.
Exactly.
Did the Browns make a good first-round pick this year?
Well, what'd they go get? Mekhi Becton? No, Will.
I think they got Will.
They got Will, which is a good pick. It's a good pick.
You got to have a tackle with Conklin there.
Yeah.
I mean, you protect Baker. I thought it was a pretty solid pick. Well,
I could make
to me, it's a no-brainer. You make that pick. It was just going to depend on what tackle you get.
Tackle, yeah.
All right, guys. We got under 2.5 minutes to go. Talk about the draft. Anything besides the players taken. What did you guys like, didn't like, virtual experience? Go.
I like the virtual experience, honestly. I thought it was, refreshing. It was more about the players. The only thing I didn't like about it was about how, like, every 5th player drafted, they talked about how their parent had died, how they had smoked weed in, like, 6th grade. Like, how do you know these things? Like, it got a little redundant. And I was like, man, the only way to get in the NFL is you have to have, like, a parent die or something like that happen.
Yeah.
So, but other than that, I think the virtual experience was great. It made Roger Goodell a little more human, and we didn't – obviously they still booed him, but I think it made him seem like a better person by him doing it at his house and everything.
That man can't read off a teleprompter. He did the best he could, but damn. He was in
I agree.
The draft's ratings were up like 25% or some crazy number like that. So I think that it was like beneficial for the draft. Just being in these people's homes and seeing them with their families, it kind of gave you a little bit more of a connection with the guys you saw them being picked when they were picked. Just because you could kind of tell where they were coming from. I thought it was an interesting take to do the draft this way. I don't know if I would continue to do it in years forward, but it definitely sufficed and held my curiosity for the duration of the draft.
We'll see. I mean, it's definitely a first-time thing. This isn't something that happens all the time, a global pandemic. But I think in hindsight and just looking at the overall scheme of things, just to be able to have an NFL draft was awesome. And they pulled it off. They did a damn good job. And obviously there were a lot of storylines. We're out of time today, but there'll be so much more to talk about in the future. So thanks for tuning in to this debut episode of Splitting Uprights, and we'll see you all soon. And make sure you don't let kids listen to this podcast.
See you guys.
Auf Wiedersehen.
Oh.